When the story of your fantasy football season in 2012 is written, will you be a champ or a chump? That may depend on who you start and sit on a weekly basis. Time now for ffchamps.com on Football Nation. Billy Enright from ffchamps.com. Billy, to be a champ in this league, who you start or who you sit on a weekly basis is probably the most important decisions you have. Let's start with quarterback this week, heading into week 5. Joe Flacco was always an interesting one to me because while he's not feast or famine, while he's not top 5 as a quarterback, he often puts up, and more times than not, really good fantasy numbers. What are you doing this week with him and why?
Hey, I'm going wacko for Flacco in week 5. Back-to-back games of over 350 passing yards. We have him all the way at number 8 on the FFCPI, our weekly performance rankings at ffchamps.com. He's got a tasty matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. They are allowing an average of 23 fantasy points to opposing running backs. The Kansas City Chiefs have the 27th worst passing defense in the league. Get Flacco into your lineups. Some other quarterbacks that you should absolutely start this week: Phillip Rivers from the Chargers, Eli Manning of the Giants, and Andy Dalton from the Cincinnati Bengals.
Not a lot of marquee games this week. You got the Patriots and Broncos. Philly and Pittsburgh is one, and you got to sit him in that one, don't you?
The Battle of Pennsylvania, and we're sitting Michael Vick. He's 16th on the FFCPI this week. The Steelers, they're just so good on defense, especially when it comes to the passing defense. Top 10 in that category. Plus, James Harrison and Troy Polamalu back in action in week 5. That's bad news for Michael Vick. Some other quarterbacks that you'll want to sit this week: Ryan Fitzpatrick against the 49ers, Mark Sanchez against the Texans, and leave Jay Cutler on your bench as well.
For running back champs, for stardoms, who you got this week?
I'm going all in with Ryan Mathews. I know a lot of fantasy managers are very frustrated with him. The fact is, though, Butch, the Saints have the 32nd rushing defense in the league, absolutely worst. They're averaging, fantasy running backs are averaging 22 points against the Saints this year. Some other running backs that I'm starting: Alfred Morris of the Washington Redskins and Cedric Benson of the Green Bay Packers.
When it comes to running back sit-ems, I was one of those guys who took your advice 8 or 10 days ago, beat everybody to the punch, got Tashard choice in a lot of my leagues. But then C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson are back. But for you, that's the sit-em this week against San Francisco.
Absolutely. You can't trust any running back going up against that dominant 49ers defense. They are allowing just 5.7 fantasy points to opposing running backs. So that means C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson have a chance for single-digit fantasy points in this outing. 49ers have the 4th-ranked rushing defense. Leave them on your bench this week. Some other guys that should be on your bench, too: Sean Green going up against the Texans and BenJarvus Green-Ellis.
When we talk about wide receiver stardoms, I think Percy Harvin might be one of those underrated guys in the league. I'm going to date myself with these names. He's not Terry Metcalf or even Mac Heron when it comes to all-purpose stuff, but he's pretty close in the modern-day football of covering every single thing to do on a football field.
He does it all, Butch. He returns punts, returns kicks. We saw him with that 104-yard touchdown return in week 4. He carries the ball out of the backfield, and he's a great option in the PPR format. I'm starting him this week. I think he has a bounce-back game against the Titans and their 15th-ranked passing defense. Titans are giving up 16 fantasy points on average to teams' number 1 wide receivers. That's certainly good news if you have Percy Harvin on your roster. Some other guys that you should get into your lineups: Michael Crabtree of the San Francisco 49ers, Malcolm Floyd of the Chargers, and how about Dominic Hickson of Hakeem Nicks is a no-go for Sunday.
You've got the Ravens and Flacco going wild against the Chiefs' defense, but you don't think Bolden's a part of that.
So Flacco can have a good game passing to his tight end and his running backs, but Anquan Bolden, coming off a big game from week 4, lower your expectations. He just outside wide receiver 3 range for week 5. Some other guys that you can leave on your bench this week: Deshaun Jackson against with the Eagles going up against the Steelers, and Nate Washington of the Tennessee Titans playing the Minnesota Vikings.
Billy, when it comes to tight ends you want to start, you're talking about Greg Olsen. What a story he's got going on. His wife is pregnant with twins.
Yep.
And they're not sure if this one of the twins is going to live or die. And he's performing admirably under these circumstances.
Yeah, I think the male twin that his wife's pregnant with has some kind of heart defect. Now, Olsen has admitted that he's not sure if once she goes to get surgery, if he's still going to play. But right now, he's playing lights out. Some other tight ends that I think you should get into your lineups: Kyle Rudolph of the Minnesota Vikings, and Martellus Bennett of the New York Giants.
When it comes to sitting tight ends this week, you got one of the biggest names up there to sit.
Yep. Antonio Gates. I'm not sure if it's the end of the road for Mr. Gates. We all know what he was capable of throughout his career, but he's simply not performing right now. 0 touchdowns heading into week 5, and the New Orleans Saints are number 1 when it comes to shutting down opposing tight ends. Gates hasn't reached 60 yards all year. Very frustrating right now. Leave him on your bench. And another tight end that I'm sitting is Heath Miller. I know he scored 4 touchdowns in 4 games, but you know what? The Eagles are pretty good when it comes to shutting down opposing tight ends as well.
He's Billy Enright of ffchamps.com. That's your start him and sit him for week 5 in the NFL. You want to be a champ or a chump? Go to ffchamps.com on Football Nation.